so we are going to go ahead and begin part two. Robert, did you have anything you want to start with right now that you want to say?
This is probably the most important table we have. It's going to give people an idea of how to grow and toolboxes and people and resources. So this is huge. Just getting somebody like John Ager to say he wants to cover his mountain in Goldenseal gives me goosebumps.
All right. Well, we've got our growers table, table 2, and this table is populated by our experts, of course, Robert Eidus of Eagle Feather Farm and Margaret Bloomquist, NC Beginning Forest Farming, Paul Strauss, Equinox Botanicals, Katie Commander of Appalachian Sustainable Development, and, of course, Joe Hollis, we love so much. And this growers table will be addressing the questions, what incentives are needed to up the production of forest-grown Goldenseal, and looking into some action plans with toolboxes to help begin upping the production of Goldenseal. Table 2.
Okay, I would actually like to hear Paul Strauss start off. He has inspired me in so many ways, and one of the things that we talked about that I would love for him to talk more about is a very delicate area of seeds versus rhizomes. I have been doing rhizomes for many, many years and have tried unsuccessfully to do seeds. Now, Jeanine Davis is here, and she can talk about her first experiment with Goldenseal seed. If Paul could come on and explain some of the things to the people, I would be thrilled to hear more about growing from seed.
Am I on now?
Yeah, you are.
I'm looking at a lot of faces here. I'm not used to this, being in front of a computer like this, but I can give you some of my experiences. When I first walked into Hydrastis heaven, it floored me. I was a 20-year-old kid, basically, and it was the fall of the year, and the ginseng was just starting to seed out. And I went back 4 or 5 days later, and what I saw is green and red seeds were totally gone. So we were able to get some seeds from someone who's growing beds in Massillon, Ohio, and got a lot of that and started in a beautiful greenhouse here. And of course, if you've seen the seeds of the plant, they look very differently than the leaf of the plant, what it turns out to be. And they're very beautiful when they're grown together. And we set it all out in a very fertile area, and it did just wonderfully. At one point, I was giving master's theses on the farm, and we had a real interesting one. A lady who husband makes trail cams was interested in finding out what species predated or ate the seeds of red-bearing seed plants like Goldenseal, ginseng, jack in the pulpit. And what she recorded on the camera was, as the seeds were going from green to red, 2 days later, the turkeys were in. 2 days later, there were no seeds. And in this property here, United Plant Savers. What we're thinking of doing now is taking a bunch of floating row cover and is not letting the turkey get it all, but harvesting some of our own seeds under the row cover and putting that on this farm. It seems to do very well on this farm. It's really fertile soil. One thing I found out about Goldenseal that's different than ginseng, ginseng should never have much fertilizer put on it. It lowers the value of it. Unlike Goldenseal, which the hydrasticine and berberine content is not hurt at all by fertilization. As a matter of fact, with a good composted soil, the roots are significantly 2 to 3 times bigger than the roots in crowded zones like here at Hydrastis heaven. They tend to stay small because there are tens of thousands in a small area using the same fertilizer load. But if you take a good compost and use that on a bed you've planted, you're going to make a lot more money, a lot more can be put out there, and you haven't hurt the product at all. It's a much more beautiful product. So that has helped us out a lot here. And I've taken both seeds and cuttings and used that in fertile soil, and the roots are significantly bigger without that much work, really. So that's one of the main reasons to do this. Fertilizer helps.
Right. I remember when Frontier owned the land next to you, and they were doing the trials with Tim. And one of the things that was shown was those beds that were aerated, that had the not the tight soil that ginseng likes, but in more aerated soil, you'll get bigger roots with the Goldenseal. And on top of aeration is fertilization. And if you put the two combinations together, the roots really start making nice big roots for use for medicine.
And the plants themselves are all bigger. The seeds are bigger, the roots are bigger, everything's bigger about them. Yet, since I'm a medicinal botanist and use the product in the products we make, it doesn't hurt the product at all having a larger, healthier root. Another way I've been able to work with local farmers around here who know Goldenseal. It's been used in this area for a long time. Mostly the people known as a gargle for sore throats. That's what most people know about its usage. But you could go to farmers around here who also have big woodlots and simply make a trade for them, planting Goldenseal on their land, and maybe the trade would be that you bring and introduce ramps to their land, and you'd have access to many farmers around here who would love to have that on their soil. We personally don't need that because we live in a community of probably about 3,000 acres now of like-minded people. We're all planting Goldenseal right now.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really huge. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is Dr. Davis and her documents for the beginning of a toolbox for our growers. I've held on to that document from 1996 or 7 that Jeanine has put together, and it is excellent on Goldenseal. Actually, I think it predated some of the stuff in her book, and so I'd like her to mention that and see if some of that information can be gotten together for the universities to put a toolbox together, or the herb schools to work on something like that for us.
Robert, that'd be really easy to do, and that's something that we could, a group of us that are on this call right now, could do as part of the Appalachian Beginning Forest Farmer Coalition, to just put together a whole package on Goldenseal. And if you would share with me that particular document that you're talking about, I just recently updated our little horticulture information leaflet on Goldenseal, but it sounds like you're talking about something else. So I'd like to see which one you're referring to, but we'd be happy to do that.
Great, great, because that's part of the action plan that we're trying to get to.
And I'd love to add some videos to that too.
Yes, once we get the websites going and the links going, we will have that ability. Yes, absolutely. Katie, how are you responding to this?
I think from the Appalachian Harvest Herb Hub perspective, one of the things that we're trying to do is work with as many forest farmers as possible to get them growing Goldenseal. But there's a lot of challenges with that. I think the biggest issue that people are facing right now is that there's just not enough planting stock available. A lot of the planting stock from nurseries that we know of locally here are selling Goldenseal in little 3-4 inch pots. But if you're trying to establish a farm and you're buying in little pots, it's way too expensive to do it that way. And so we have a grant right now through the Virginia Department of Ag and Consumer Services, their specialty crop block grant, to basically give mini grants to nurseries in the state of Virginia. And this could potentially be a model for other states to look at, where we're trying to encourage nurseries in Virginia to start to grow larger quantities of Goldenseal planting stock in bulk wholesale quantities, to help forest farmers with establishment. I see Shawn smiling too. I think they're working on some plant and stock stuff, and I'm sure other people are too, but I think that's a big burden and hurdle that forest farmers really need to overcome, and something that collaboratively I'd like for us to identify some solutions on.
Great.
I was laughing at something else entirely, but what I wanted to chime in there is specifically what there's a shortage of is Goldenseal seed, because if you're going to plant it on large volume, not only can you not afford to be buying potted plants, you really can't afford to be buying rhizomes either if we're going to talk about acreage basis of Goldenseal, and it's just not out there in any quantity, you know.
Well, I think that, yeah, I think I have the reason for that, Shawn. Most of the Goldenseal growers that I know plant the day they harvest. Keeping the seed active and alive is very tricky. Little black seeds like to dry out real easy. And so most of the people I know take their seeds and immediately start another place where they start their bed. And that's one of the reasons I've sold seed once to a university for work. And believe it or not, the price that I was selling that seed for was ridiculous. They could only do their project with seed and not with rhizomes. But in some reality, because there's no commercial seed market at all, getting it is going to cost you not a few bucks. It was probably my most expensive seed deal I ever did. All of it has to be overnight shipped. It all has to be refrigerated, otherwise they dry out real easy. And it's just a tough one. And I would love for your college to figure out a way to get it from seed to other people without it drying out and being useless.
Well, that's what we're working on. At this point, we're just building up a large enough population that we are generating enough seed we can sell at that volume. But we're close. We're within a couple of years of being able to do that. And seed is really where we're looking at going, simply because we can't get it. It's not available. You know, so we can figure out the logistics of how to get it shipped. It's we've been able to propagate it fine from seed.
Well, what are your techniques? Can you put that into a toolbox?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and Dave, as Dave Elam, as some of y'all know, is really the one who handles all that propagation. And so I can't go into the specifics other than I know and can see, you know, in the shade house that he's doing very well with it. And then we're transplanting it to the forest from potted plants that have been grown in the shade house from seed. And it's transplanting fine too. So we're getting it out into the forest from seed. We just haven't built up the populations large enough that we can start selling seed on volume. But that's where we're going with it. That way more people can get it out into the forest. Absolutely.
And if that could go into the toolbox, that would be a real big one. Even if the people just take their seed from their own plants to replant.
And Robert, that's exactly what we find works just fine. If you collect your own berries and plant your own seeds and do that all in good time, it works just fine. The project that you were referring to before was we were trying to work for the seed companies to come up with a way for them to amass a bunch of seed and sell it to their customers. And that's where we found holding that seed in all those different methods really didn't work well. But for you yourself and growers, if they sow their own seed, they should get good germination.
Good. Good. It's a learning curve for me. I'm still on rhizomes.
Well, that's a good place to start, Robert. And what a lot of folks are doing is expanding vegetatively, and then from there choosing the best seeds to expand out through all these efforts. And I wanted to add one more incentive or thing there is, of course, the price paid to these growers as they're putting stuff out, to have incentives to put out seed, to clear areas, and to work on growing golden seal is the response from the consumers and the industry to purchase that material after a number of years. Another thing, which is further down the line, but of course, is the succession and information there regarding planting and harvesting, so we can keep a supply going once it's in the ground.
Great. Good. Okay.
I would like to ask Jeanine, when you are replanting the berries, you're not bothering to clean the seeds, you're just like crumbling up the berry into the ground? How are you actually doing it? So you got a berry in your hand, what are you going to do?
So we've done it both ways, and when we're doing research, we go through the normal method of extracting the seed and cleaning it up and putting it out, but it also works with the berry and just crushing the berry and scattering those seeds.
Well, it'd certainly save a lot of time.
Yeah, but in order to sell it, for you to be able to sell the seed, you know, that's where we're running into the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if you wanted to, I mean, maybe an approach to take would be for people to grow masses of little seedlings just by crumbling up berries and not trying to sell seed.
Right.
But just fork up these bare root seedlings if you had big dense beds of them and market that conceivably.
So, well, I spoke or emailed with Jean Harrison of Red Root Natives the other day because she put out her wholesale plant list and she didn't have golden seal on there. So I emailed her and said, aren't you doing golden seal? And she's like, oh yes, but those flats of seedlings sell out so fast, she never gets them on her availability list. So we need to talk to Jean because she seems to be a pro with raising flats of these plants from seeds that other people have difficulty with.
For sure. Yeah. Well, my method is just as I harvest to make tincture, I just break off the tip and plant it right back, just out in the woods, and take the rest of it home to tincture or sell, make whatever product I'm making. But, you know, I'm just super small scale. I mean, I don't know if you could scale that up or not.
Okay. Thank you for your input. So, Lisa, it looks like we're close to it.
Yes, we are doing great, and I really love the multidisciplinary approach as far as all of the different options and ways to plant and propagate golden seal, because it sounds like we need to head at it from every direction. So I think that's part of the toolbox would be all of the different ways to propagate and look at farming it. So that sounds so great. I love all these perspectives.